The 29th of May national and provincial elections are poised to be hotly contested since the dawn of democracy in 1994, with the participation of independent candidates for the first time ever and a long list of new parties. It remains to be seen how the Electoral Commission will shoulder the task at hand. At the same time, civil society groups are expressing concerns over the integrity of the electoral process. Joining us now for more on this discussion is Defend Our Democracy Executive Director Zaakirah Vadi. Zaakirah, thank you so much for your time and for joining us this evening. What's your overall assessment on the doubt that has been cast on our electoral system just before the elections?
Well, from Defend Our Democracy side, we are quite concerned by the rhetoric that's being put forward by certain political parties. Firstly, it's political parties that are outrightly attacking the IEC and the credibility of the IEC without any real evidence to back that up. And then secondly, there are other political parties who are putting forward narratives wanting to draw in, for example, foreign governments, and basically beginning to cast doubt on the integrity of the electoral processes. And we think that's quite worrying because even before the elections start, you're already beginning to cast doubt on it. And that in itself, I think, could dissuade voters from coming to the polls on election day. So political parties, I think, need to exercise a bit more caution.
Of course. I mean, that was my next question as to what impact do you think this will have on the voters? Do you foresee any primary challenges or vulnerabilities that do exist within the IEC?
Well, I think the IEC has done a sterling job from 1994 up to now. This year, however, it is the first time that we'll be using a slightly different electoral system. So there'll be 3 ballots instead of 2 ballots. So the system is somewhat untested. And secondly, I think that, there's many more voters on the voters' roll. There are newer issues such as load shedding, for example, that need to be dealt with. So there's a whole range of logistical issues, including the very short time span from now up until election day. However, from our discussions with the IEC, where they've hosted civil society before, they've assured us that their systems are in place. And even more recently, when there was doubt cast, for example, the ANC was indicating that there may be some sort of foreign interference in the election. The IEC did assure people that it is fortifying its systems. That being said, we think it is important to have local or domestic observers, people from civil society, ordinary people from the public, observing the elections. And that in some way lends a hand to better, give better credibility and legitimacy to the electoral processes as well.
I mean, Defend Our Democracy has come up with a campaign called Election Watch. Just take us through that. This involves ordinary citizens being the observers of these elections. How will that work?
So we're encouraging organizations, any civil society organization in any part of the country, to register with the IEC and to register on the Election Watch portal. So that's on our Defend Our Democracy website. And thereafter, access a common app. And all of the observers that observe with your organization have access to this app, where you're able to go or log on election day and give live feedback from the station where you are based. The system is open to individuals as well. We will match up with an organization, and this is because the IEC only accredits organizations and not individuals. And we think that this live system, where we're getting live feedback from people on the ground, will indicate both on election day, perhaps where there are areas of concern. Maybe there's a particular voting station where there may be violence, or maybe a voting station where, ballot papers have ran out, for example. And that's an early warning system that may equip us to escalate that to the IEC or to law enforcement. And secondly, it's really post-elections when we'll be able to tally all of the feedback that we have, analyze it, and pronounce more broadly on the integrity of the election. So we are not setting up, what is called a parallel voter tabulation system, because we don't have, all 23,000 voting stations covered. But we think through a representative sample of voting stations, we would be able to broadly pronounce on the integrity of the election.
Yes, of course. I mean, it's 23,000 voting stations. Would people be able just to give on the hand in terms of whether ballot papers are late? Is this done in the 11 languages that people are able to communicate in and to try and give that speedy reaction in terms of what is currently happening at voting stations?
Well, we want to separate the app with only accredited election observers. So there's a kind of science that goes with it. There's training that goes into election observation work, both IEC-related training and training by Defend Our Democracy. And that's slightly separate to, I think, a more public system. We think that for now, the kind of social media platforms are the most accessible for the ordinary public. So if people, for example, tweet using the hashtag ElectionWatch, we'd be able to track that hashtag and simply see, where there are reports coming from. And these are, we are not able to cover every voting station. It's important if someone is not an official or accredited observer, you're still able to take to social media and report what's taking place in your surroundings. Mm. And that will be another important indicator that we'll be keeping an eye on election day.
Mm. Have organizations and people started to register on the app?
Yes, so we have at least about 50 organizations who have already registered. We expect this number to climb significantly in this next period. The cutoff date that the IEC has given us is May 1st. So by the 1st of May, any organization wanting to register needs to do so with the IEC by then. And similarly, we have a number of individuals who have already begun accessing the registration system as individuals. This is separate to organizations. And we now need to begin matching them up with an organization in their locality and seeing how best to accredit them via that process. So that work has begun, and we think in between the end of March and April it will be stepped up significantly.
And is there a cut-off date for individuals that are also applying on the app?
Yes, everything has to be into the IEC by May 1st.
Right.
We are saying, at least by the 27th of April, organizations and individuals need to at least register via ElectionWatch and via the IEC, so that by May 1st, we're sure of the numbers of people that we would have out on the field on election day, and we're able to ensure that the IEC has verified them and accredited them as well.
Mm. And are there any risks that you foresee that could be allocated to some of the observers, especially individuals who will be taking on some of this work, and how do you look to mitigate these risks?
Well, there are hotspot areas, and a number of organizations, both ElectionWatch and others not linked to ElectionWatch, are very closely looking at hotspot areas. And this is really looking at data from previous elections where there may have been incidences of violence, for instance. And, pinpointing those areas and seeing that they can be dedicated observers who are highly skilled and trained who would be able to visit those areas. However, the IEC rules are quite important, and it really guides an observer that an observer is not meant to get physically involved in anything that is unfolding. You are meant to observe and record your inputs. And that, I think, is one way in which an observer can protect themselves in the field. But our advice to any observer in the field is that if you are in a violent situation, the best thing to do is to remove yourself from that situation. You can log a report afterwards, or the matter can be escalated to the regional IEC person who's in charge. So in no way must observers put their own lives, or their own bodies at risk.
Mm. Lastly, do you think that this process might also cultivate a culture of active citizenry beyond just casting a vote?
Definitely. During an election period, it's usually political party members that are busy going door to door. And for the ordinary citizen, it's just about putting the X. And putting your X on the ballot is a very important process because it's the start of the democratic process. But joining an election observation campaign means that there's more to active citizenship during an election period. It means you are actively going about trying to ensure or better the integrity of that electoral process. And it's really the start of, further activism that people can involve themselves in, such as accountability work post-elections. And for Defend Our Democracy, 2024 is really the start. We think we can grow this collective observation campaign into 2026 and into 2029, both elections of which will be, I think, even more fiercely contested than the 2024 elections.
All right, Zaakirah, thank you so much for your time this evening. Wish you all the best with that campaign. That was Defend Our Democracy Executive Director Zaakirah Vadi speaking to us there about the Election Watch campaign, where citizens can be observers.